The alternative for Germany, the AFD, won 20%. That's twice as much as the last election.
I'm deeply worried by the darkening shadow that's going over the world, the shadow of what we have to call fascism.
Democracy in Germany, democracy across the world. Democracy obviously ought mean that the will of the people is enacted by the institutions that it funds and ought operate entirely in its service. These days, though, democracy don't mean that. Democracy means how can the institutions that serve the powerful be preserved without the public noticing it. That's what's going on in Germany right now. That's what's going on in your country right now. It's what's going on everywhere, as far as I can tell, that isn't ultimately moving in the direction of populism. Let's have a look at the results of the German election.
Germany has voted, and it is the end of the road for Chancellor Olaf Scholz. He'll most likely be replaced by this man, Friedrich Merz. His Conservatives won the most votes today. At the age of 69, Merz is about to take his first job in government.
So who will this Friedrich Merz ultimately serve? Let's have a look, eventually over the course of this conversation, we'll look at Friedrich Merz and his former affiliations and associations. I wonder if this guy has the interests of the German people at the forefront of his mind, or if he has a long history of relationships with globalist interests. Let me know in the comments and chat which way you think it's going to go.
He faces an anemic economy, a war raging in Europe, and Donald Trump in the White House. Now, this election also marked a historic rise in support for the far right. The alternative for Germany, the AFD, won 20%. That's twice as much as the last election. They're headed for the opposition because no one wants to work with them, but their support, their power, they're growing. Tonight, they remain Germany's political pariah, but for how much longer?
What constitutes a political pariah? Very plainly, what the legacy media mean when they talk about that is nationalism or nativist politics, whether that's parties in the UK like Reform or figures like Tommy Robinson in the United States of America. It means Donald Trump. It means nationalism. Now, is there an inseparable relationship between nationalism and racism? Is it possible to be patriotic and not be racist? Let me know in the comments and chat what you think about that. Is nationalism fundamentally racism? Because it seems to me that that is the argument being advanced by globalist, centralist media sources. If you are nationalistic, you are racist. Let me know in the comments and chat if you consider yourself to be patriotic and if you consider yourself to be racist. And some of you let me know inadvertently or otherwise that there are some fascinating perspectives when it comes to race. We're going to be looking at Stephen Fry. Funny you bring that up, Woodsters, in the Rumble chat, 'cause we're going to be looking at Stephen Fry's recent viral video where he claims that he's deeply concerned about fascism. Now, check this out, though. We just heard that Friedrich Merz is likely to be the person that leads this coalition in spite of significant votes for the ADF in Germany. Let's have a look at this breakdown from someone called Bernie on X. Germany, the globalists win again. New Chancellor Friedrich Merz is their perfect pick. Ex-chairman of BlackRock Germany, dedicated to deeper EU integration, member of the WEF's Board of Trustees, regular attendee of WEF, attended Bilderberg Group meetings, supported COVID vaccine passports, wanted restrictions on the unvaccinated, advocated for digital ID in Germany, supported EU-wide asylum policies, supports carbon trading markets. The penetration of the cabinets continues. You cannot help people if the people will not help themselves. Good luck, Germany. So that's the analysis there of Friedrich Merz. Now, what people across the world in liberal circles are discussing, whether that's Donald Trump or even media like you're participating in right now, if you're in the comments, they think that you are racist if you are nationalistic or populist. But the argument that I would offer you is this: globalism, in the manner described and demonstrated by the career of the new leader of Germany, is what people fear most of all. That new autonomous systems of bureaucracy will be implemented across the world that will control finance and matters of dominion and war so rigidly that what you believe in or don't believe in will become irrelevant. And there will be successive crises, whether they're war or medical in their nature, that legitimize further and further authoritarianism. I mean, just look at the resume of Friedrich Merz there. He's the sort of person who, during the pandemic, would have wanted you locked down and wanted you vaccinated. What did the leader of your country want during that time? Now, some of you might be saying, well, Trump's, one of his proudest achievements in office last time round was Operation Warp Speed, but Trump has now radically revised his perspective on COVID and in particular COVID medications. And COVID in and of itself is not super significant, although it was, it seemed bloody important while we were going through it. It's just, it was a great lens through which to view how power operates now. Power is no longer alloyed to a particular political party. Both parties believe the same thing when it comes to COVID. Isn't that interesting? They might call it unity, but actually what it is hegemony. It also shows that there's an agenda to use technology to increasingly monitor and control populations. And because they can't just outwardly tell you that, we're going to control you, they have to create crises that make their control seem like care. That's what people mean by globalism. And the only way, or the only accessible way it appears, to oppose that is populism, nationalism, demagogic leaders that say, I'm going to put America, France, Germany, UK, Ireland, Morocco first. Those are the obvious vanguards, sort of like bulwarks against advancing globalist power, because within globalism, by its nature, there is a kind of homogeny. You can't find alternatives to it. Just take the issue of the Ukraine conflict in my country, the UK. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, member of the Conservative Party, current Prime Minister Keir Starmer, member of the Labour Party, both have the exact same policy when it comes to COVID and when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia war. They both believe the same thing. So whoever you voted for, you were going to get those outcomes. As Noam Chomsky, that right-wing fascist, used to say, where both parties agree, you have no choice at all. Where both parties agree, you have no choice at all. As Julian Assange taught us, the function of government is to transfer public money into private hands.
The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite.
If an event, whether it's a natural disaster, a medical emergency or a war, function in that manner, transferring public money into private hands, then you know that that's what's actually happening. That's the raison d'etre. That's what you have to be observant of. Now, in Germany, you've just had an election where a right-wing fascist party has gained a bunch of votes and gained a bunch of seats, and the party of the left and the right, the parties that are meant to hate each other, just boom, magnetized instantaneously together to ensure that party didn't get into power. But thank God they did, would the harbingers and Cassandras on the sidelines would say. Otherwise, you'd have fascism again in Germany, just like last time when it was the Nazis. That better not be a sea Kyle over there. Nazism and fascism now, i.e. amalgamated centralized power, comes from the relationships of the state and commercial corporate entities, and Friedrich Merz is a bigger threat than whoever's the leader of that ADF with their nationalist rhetoric. Health insurance is confusing, expensive, and frustrating, and claim denials are becoming more and more common. In fact, 1 in 5 Obamacare claims were denied last year. That's unacceptable. The headache of health insurance is exactly why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance, it's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. For $175 for an individual payment or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months by using the code BRAND at joincrowdhealth.com. Mandatory disclaimer, Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more about joincrowdhealth.com. So use the code BRAND for a novel way to solve your medical concerns. Why should you be bankrupted through healthcare needs like so many are? And why should you be left short when you actually need to pay for a medical matter? Investigate for yourself Crowd Health, a brilliant and novel way of navigating the labyrinth of American healthcare insurance. So, Let's have a look at what Stephen Fry, liberal and intellectual in the UK. If you were an English person, you'd know all about Stephen Fry. He's very, very popular there. He was in brilliant TV shows like Blackadder in his own show with Hugh Laurie, who you might be more familiar with. He says he's concerned about the rise of fascism. I'm concerned about the rise of fascism too. But I consider fascism now to be veiled by bureaucracy and sterility, not by bombast, jingoism and nationalism. Let me know in the comments and chat what you think is the greatest threat to your freedom. Is it resurgent nationalism and patriotism, or is it globalism and its kind of insidious tendrils that seem invisible and are only revealed when you scrutinize what happens in crisis? Well, what happens in crisis is power becomes centralized. So what's happening in Germany is way on trend. Let's have a look at Stephen Fry and his concerns about, well, essentially you.
I'm deeply worried by the darkening shadow that's going over the world, the shadow of what we have to call fascism.
You would use that word?
Oh, absolutely. It's a cult of power, and power only speaks to power.
That's an extraordinary claim from Stephen Fry, a person who I admire and respect in a whole bunch of ways. And I think he's missing the nuances of what's just happened in Germany. The truly significant fact is that the parties of the apparent left and apparent right were easily able to amalgamate in order to ensure that an election could be ignored. Also, you're making a plea for a new type of aristocracy in the sense of, oh, the people don't understand. They're idiots. You have to censor their online information. You because they're too vulnerable. They're too stupid. They're like children. They'll be swept away on a crazy, giddy typhoon of emotion. We have to protect them. I don't agree with that anymore. And I reckon that the rise of populism and nationalism is an appropriate response to globalism that has caused two evident and obvious problems. First and foremost, a massive transfer of wealth, as evidenced during the pandemic, and second, migration crisis all over Europe. And it's something that Americans are deeply concerned about as well. People are concerned about migration and lack of economic opportunity in their own countries and feeling ideologically divorced from the leaders in their own countries. That's my quick appraisal. Let me know in the comments and chat if you agree with that. And they're right, because even if they vote for, say, the ADF, they don't get the ADF in government. I know they didn't win anyway. They were the second biggest party, but surely they should have been the party that were part of a coalition rather than the opposition. But hey, what I truly believe is this. People are awakening in such large numbers because of independent media. And independent media is important not because of the people behind the microphone. It's important because of the people behind the keyboards, i.e. you. What's happened in media? Diversification and new varieties emerging, figures like Dan Bongino now in government, is in the end, independent media was going to impact politics. It was going to cause fracture. Now, I know European politics are set up, parliamentary politics at least, are set up differently from a country like yours or mine, i.e. it's not two powerful parties endlessly opposing one another. They get different types of representation, so it's easier to get coalitions. It doesn't happen in your country, America. It doesn't often happen in mine. It happens occasionally. But we will see splintering and fracturing and fragmentation, because in my country, the UK, people are going to recognise, wait a minute, these massive agriculture protests, this disdain for Keir Starmer, it's got to have some kind of political voice. Is that voice going to be Nigel Farage? Let me know in the comments and chat what you think about that. And in your country, America, we're seeing attempts to decry, deny, attack, undermine Donald Trump, who is plainly an imperfect figure, but has risen to power on the back of a massive electoral and democratic movement. He is the people's representative, and he is governing based on mandates that he was explicit about during campaigning. I'm gonna control immigration, I'm going to stop this war. It's not like, all of them lot. Like when they campaign, they tell you this, we're going to, it's going to be better for you essentially. And then when they get into government, they break the promises they made when campaigning. We're going to be covering more over the course of this show how Trump is merely the public manifestation of what a lot of politicians do in the shadows when it comes to brokerage and setting up deals. But when it comes to German democracy, plainly the real fascist threat is globalism, not nationalism. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.